and welcome to my little craft corner. I am Tabby, and today we're doing some crafting. I still need my journal for the year 2026, so I will show you what it looked like last year so you can get a small impression of what to expect from today's video. I always use it more as an art journal to keep my memories and less as something to really plan things in, like a calendar. I might add one or two trackers, but I'm always very motivated at the beginning of the year, and after 2 or 3 months, the trackers usually stop being filled in. So I don't know yet how far I will actually go with that, but something along those lines we'll create together if you would like to join me today. I have already laid out everything you will need if you want to make your own journal or your planner or your art journal, memory book, whatever you'd like to create today. It can also be helpful today to have a set square or a short transparent ruler if you don't want to handle a large ruler all the time. And depending on the glue you're using, a brush, like a silicone brush, works very well. And a bone folder is always good to give paper a sharp edge. And since we'll be working with a lot of fabric and lace to create the cover, small pins might be useful to temporarily secure the fabrics before attaching them permanently with glue or the sewing machine. So that's everything you'll need in terms of tools. What you will definitely need today is a paper bag, like a paper shopping bag. But the size doesn't matter, and it also doesn't matter whether it's landscape or portrait. So I want to make a journal roughly in A5 size, and I will cut the bag down anyways to the size I need. If you want to make a journal, like me, that's covered with fabric and lace, you of course need fabric. And I think a slightly sturdier fabric works best in that case. And I'll definitely use a solid colored one, because later on, through the lace, there will already be a lot going on visually. For lace, you can use whatever you have. Some doilies in thicker or finer styles, or this here is an old curtain, or you can also use really fine decorative lace, whatever you like. I personally don't know yet exactly what I will use from this selection. I also have a few other fabrics and laces to choose from. I will decide that while I'm making the journal. What you will also need is, of course, paper. I've already pre-sorted quite a lot, probably more than will actually go into my journal because it's simply too much, but it gives me a few ideas. Here we have some old envelopes, and this here is one of those advent calendar bags, I think. Paper bags like these, sandwich bags, and wrapping paper, especially at the beginning of the year. I always have quite a bit left over from Christmas. This is some pattern paper, and I think this is the kind of paper you often find in shoe boxes. Some baking paper, paper doilies, and again, very thin paper. Then, of course, book pages from all kinds of books. Some of these I've already worked with, crumpled them, splashed them with paint and whatnot. Yeah, some plain text pages, pages from nature books with animals and plants, different languages. This is from an old magazine, and that one is from a school book. More paper with plants, also from a school book. And of course, an owl. This is from an old or antique magazine or calendar. Mm, it is from around 1929, I think. And this one is even older, a really beautiful antique paper. And then mixed with very modern paper that I've simply aged with a bit of coffee. I really like having many different papers, many different materials in my journals. So this comes from a notebook, wallpaper, as I already mentioned in one of my previous videos. Wallpaper is always great because it's very robust and very sturdy. Oh, here's a greeting card. I already talked about these in the Gerwin video. This is a milk carton paper, so like the inside layer of milk cartons. Here I have normal copy paper treated with some acrylic paint, baking paper, and many plain papers in different thicknesses. This is slightly thicker notebook paper that I dyed with coffee, acrylic paint, or a mixture of both. The paper here was treated the same way as some of the book pages you saw earlier. The technique is called momigami. Yes, I looked it up after recording. But basically, you take the paper, apply a huge amount of hand cream on it, and then massage it into the paper while crumple it. First of all, it smells really nice and it gives the paper a very soft, nearly fabric or leather texture. Something I wanted to try and have never done before is adding mandalas to my journal as pages. The paper itself is fairly sturdy, around I think 160 GSM or more. And I think even without coloring, the motifs are really beautiful. And I also think it's just something nice to relax and color whenever you feel like it, which I will definitely be doing in my 2026 journal. What I will also be using are these beautiful papers. They are actually meant for planners, but I'll just use some elements from them. And even though my journal won't be a fixed calendar, I still wanted to move through the month. And that's why I wanted to use this beautiful kit by Seven Plaza. You can find them on her Ko-Fi account, which I will link below for you. This is the January kit that I want to show you in this video. And if I understood it correctly, she plans to release a new kit every month, and I will use those in my journal throughout the year. This one is called Dutch, I think. I'll probably only use the page that introduces the months from those two. And as you can see, the month is spelled in Dutch, what makes it pretty special for me at least. From this kit, I will only use some parts, like the decorative parts, and not so much the planner ones. These pages are designed to be bound into a ring binder, and that's why you have these borders over here to punch the holes for that. But I think I might only use these illustrations itself, gluing it onto pages that I've already added to my journal. I will still use the smaller images because I think they are very pretty. I just won't use the parts that are very clearly planner related. I find the images incredibly beautiful, very romantic and idyllic, and the blue tones are perfect for January when everything still feels a bit colder. There are little windmills and ships again. Yeah, I think it's just a really cute kit. These were the planner style pages, and now come the more decorative papers you can use to embellish your journal. Um, those are great for belly bands or for decorating the top or bottom of your pages, like small borders. Here you see some ships and windmills again, going on with some tags and labels, which you can even use on your cover if you'd like to. And here are some background pages, and I think they are really, really pretty. The kit is free to download on 7 Plus's coffee page, and I think you can do so much with it, even outside of planner or calendar use. And here we have some larger tags. I printed these on copy paper, but for tags, I would recommend using slightly thicker paper. But I usually glue them onto some scrap paper or sturdy old register dividers, so they're nice and stable. These here are tabs you can cut out, which is great if you don't have a punch, and also more small decorative elements and some beige toned ephemera. And here we have some journal cards that you can, of course, use for journaling, but also for just decorating your journal. I begin by opening the bottom of the paper bag, and it doesn't matter if it tears a bit because we won't use the full width anyway. I just opened it off camera because it was just loud and noisy and wouldn't have added anything, to be honest. If something takes me too long, I tend to do it off camera. Would you prefer it like that, or do you want to see a little bit of the struggle? Depends on you. The bottom of the bag was glued together, and I just took it completely apart and unfolded the bag fully. It's actually very large for my journal of an A5 size. So yeah, I've just folded it further, also keeping the parts that would give the shopping bag itself later a little bit of volume. But I want to keep the full length because I like having these large pockets at the front and the back. So these are the openings of the shopping bag, and I want to keep them because they are very practical for working later on in the journal and having your ephemera in here until you actually will glue it down into your journal. So I checked whether the width would be enough for the front, the back, and the spine, because I want to have 6 signatures in my journal. In my old journal, I used elastic bands. That's practical because you can remove the signatures when the journal gets very full to work in them. But for this one, with lace and fabric, I don't like the look of elastic bands, so I'll sew the signatures in directly. this time I won't group 3 month per signature as I did it before, but only 2 month each. Yeah, and that gives me a total of 6 signatures. Now I need the height of the journal, but I just do that roughly using the old journal as a guide and make my first mark. For now, I think I leave the width as it is, just trimming the damaged edges. First, I remove the handles, but I will keep them for now. Well, now I cut the back open, and this is the piece I kept. But since it's open at the top, I'll glue this edge closed. So the journal will be folded this way and the sides remain open. Only this edge gets glued. You really don't have to be precise here. The pockets will still be large enough to store lots of things. And now I start thinking about which fabrics to use. So the fabric will cover both sides completely and then the lace goes on top. I had 3 fabrics prepared. First, this very beautiful sunny yellow fabric, then this blue one, and think I was mainly inspired by the January kit when I chose it. In general, I think it is pretty, but I believe I'll actually stick with the one I showed you at the beginning, this dark pink fabric. Again, I won't measure here. I simply place the journal underneath because I actually like it when the fabric sticks out a bit and looks frayed, as I said. And so I don't want the fabric to end exactly flush with the paper. I want it to stick out slightly so you always get this frayed and a bit grungy look. And because of that, it doesn't need to be perfectly exact. So I also tear the fabric to achieve that effect. This piece I will need twice, of course, for the inside and the outside of the cover. First, I tear the fabric here, and as you can see, it is a fairly large piece of fabric, and I simply tear it across the full width. When you lay it down like this, you can see that it sticks out a bit on both sides, but that's exactly what I want. So now I do the same for the height, and I want it to stick out slightly here as well. So this gives us piece number one, and now piece number two. I just try to roughly line them up, but it doesn't matter if the front and the back or the inside and the outside aren't identical. This leftover piece of fabric I can still use for other projects, but now we have the front and the back, or the inside and the outside. As you can see, the fabric is already fraying quite a lot, but in this case, that's actually intentional. And I often keep those threads to decorate with later. Next, I take my glue, and I'm using a glue stick for now because I'll be sewing later. If you're only gluing because you don't have a sewing machine or don't want to sew, make sure to have a stronger glue that's suitable for fabric and holds well long term. I think UHU does say that it can be used for fabric, but especially with thicker fabric, I wouldn't rely on it for the long term. I only want to glue down this edge, and of course it gets messy with the glue stick. Another thing to keep in mind, of course, a glue stick will cause the paper to warp slightly. If you don't like that, yeah, just don't use a glue stick or any water-based glue. But for me, it always worked well. And now I'm struggling a little bit to attach the paper to the fabric or the fabric to the paper, doesn't matter. I try to place it evenly, but it just doesn't work. And even on the second attempt, it wasn't straight at all. And as it turns out, you can't easily attach a very crooked cut piece of paper perfectly straight. So after trying a few more times off camera, I realized the top edge was actually very crooked. You probably noticed that already. So I've corrected that now, and we can continue by attaching the second fabric piece to the other side. I definitely notice that I still need to get used to working with the camera, and I hope you'll forgive me. Crafting can be a bit chaotic sometimes. Now move on to the second piece that goes here. And again, it doesn't need to be exact. I just try to make it roughly fit. And you can see already how some of the wrinkles that have been in the fabric are starting to smooth out. If you want, you could stop at this stage and leave it at just the fabric without adding lace. And of course, that way you would already have a beautiful fabric covered journal and could add, for example, a nice topper later. But I will continue and attach the lace next. Same as the fabric, I marked the height and the width of the journal on this piece of lace. But now I noticed that it was very hard to find my pencil markings again. So I'm now using a textile marker, also called a trick marker. The nice thing about it is that it's very visible right now. But once you iron over it or apply heat in any other way, the color disappears completely. So I've cut everything to size now, finally. If at any point, and I mentioned it before, this takes too long or I struggle too much, I usually cut that part out of the video. If you would like to see those parts, feel free to let me know in the comments. But I can tell you, it will take a while until everything is arranged just right. We will cover this layer later on with some doilies, so small imperfections will be hidden that way completely. This time I won't use glue. Instead, I'll use pins because I'm worried the glue might soak through the lace. If you also plan on sewing this later, make sure not to sew across the sides, cause these will be your pockets, otherwise you would shut the pockets. And that's why after sewing everything, I will also secure the edges with glue so nothing opens up at the sides. One thing I really like about this soft fabric cover is that it's very flexible, and I like how soft it feels. I like the sound it makes, and I love the different textures, paper, lace, and fabric all together. Another pro is that I don't have to decide yet how wide the spine will be because everything is flexible. And yes, there is still a crease here from where the back was folded originally, but I can adjust that later once the signatures are finished. So I don't need to worry about that yet. Okay, what I do need to think about now is something I forgot, unfortunately. If I sew the doilies on, I will also sew the pockets shut. So luckily I noticed this in time. So now I have to rethink that a little bit because I still want to keep the pocket's depth, not the full depth, because of the spine will take a little bit of it away, but enough to fit at least a postcard. So I marked a line here up to where I can safely sew while keeping the pockets usable. And up to this line, I will sew the doilies in place, and above that, I will glue them instead. So that's the plan. Now we can start arranging the lace. I lay everything down first to see what I like and what not, and what fits for me and what feels well. So it is a little bit of back and forth until I love what I see. So I have arranged it roughly now, and yeah, carefully lift it just to check how it looks as a real cover. And I think this actually looks quite nice, especially with the heart here. And I definitely want this finer lace here and the slightly thicker ones around it. So I think that works well. While I fix the doilies with the pins, I try to push those only through the first layer. And of course, you have to be a little bit careful with the back and forth because of these pointy needles you have in there now. And it only needs to hold enough to keep everything in place on the cover until you sew or glue it down. It doesn't need to be fixed permanently yet. Everything shifts around a bit right now, so it's completely normal if you're in that stage. But once it's sewn on, it will lie flatter and sit much more securely on your fabric. Well, I wanted to make sure that the doilies don't stick out at the edges. And yeah, here it does. So I clearly haven't paid enough attention to that. And I adjusted a bit again, so I think this looks a little bit better now. Otherwise, there would be two similar flower shapes here, so I prefer it this way. But here at the top, it is actually intentional because it acts like a small tab. So yeah, that was planned. What I usually do last is the topper, at least when it is a personal journal that I'm making for myself, because I like to add things later that I've collected over time, small memory pieces, postcards, things like that. So I am curious, have you ever made a journal? Do you have a fixed process or does it change every time? So just a final check if everything is arranged as I want to. So now everything is pinned in place and I will head to my sewing machine. And just a quick reminder, I will only sew this part, the rest will be glued. Okay, I am back from my sewing machine now, and for now I have actually only sewn the edges all the way around and haven't sewn the doilies, cause I will glue them down now with the rest of the laces. And for that I am using art glitter glue. I just removed this very fine tip first because we will need quite a bit of glue here anyways. With fabric, it simply absorbs much more glue than paper does. And now I slowly work my way along. And yeah, I figured out I want this delicate piece to sit underneath all the other ones. You don't need to worry about the glue showing through because you won't see it on the inside anyways. And if it slightly soaks through the fabric, that's not a problem at all. I will show it again in a moment on the inside so you will see it better there. But I stitched everything with an ivory thread because I wanted it to blend into the journal and into the lace a little bit more. And of course, you can choose any thread color you like. So this is how I will attach all the lace doilies and I will be right back. So I am finished now. Even the glue still needs a little bit of time to dry in some places. Until then, one tip I can give you, especially if you're using thicker crochet doilies or fabrics, don't be stingy with the glue. Otherwise, it won't hold properly later, and that would be a shame. Unfortunately, I also got some glue inside the pocket, but that's fine. And I usually trim the threads like I do now. And here you can see again that I sewed everything with an off-white ivory thread. And I like sewing in slightly wavy lines so it doesn't look too neat. Personally, I find that very pretty. What I still need to do now is glue this part down onto the fabric and glue the fabric properly onto the paper. So let's glue that down as well. As you can see, I apply the glue quite generously because, as I mentioned, the fabric absorbs a lot of the moisture from the glue. Oh, and over here I am using a small silicone spatula. I saw that or see that quite often at Gail's channel, and I think it's a really good idea because you don't get so much glue on your hands. I actually started to create a journal like this, like an actual planner or calendar. Because the idea originally came from 49 Dragonflies, so from Barbara. And at first, I really made this as a planner with a calendar and everything. And she usually does 3 or 4 months at a time in one planner, I think. And I tried that once or twice, but it didn't really work out for me. I realized I prefer a yearly planner because otherwise I often feel that I can't fill it properly since I'm also working in many other journals and doing other paper projects, and especially this planner part to write down my appointments or to do so whatnot, that didn't work out for me. And that's why I decided to make one journal for the whole year. But if you would like to see how she does it, I'll gladly link her channel below. I have to admit that I am recording this again after I finished the project because although I was already quite happy with the journal cover, the longer I looked at it, the more I felt that something was still missing. So I decided to add a few more elements. I already laid out some buttons and flowers, and I'm now trying to decorate the cover a bit more. One good thing about having these pockets is that I can push breads through here without damaging the inside cover now. I think I will play around with this a little bit until I find something that feels right for me, and then I will bring you back in. So far, I am happy with it how it looks, and this is just a small basic design now. And I decided on the combination of buttons and flowers. And I also placed some threads that were left over from yesterday when I recorded the first video underneath here. And I think that will look quite nice. Oh yeah, I also added some book pages underneath just to see how it looks, and yeah, now I just need to attach everything. I still swap this paper out for one that only has tags on it because this one was just for testing. I'm doing this quite roughly. I just tear the paper. I don't measure anything, as you might know by now. And I will ink the edges all around using Distress Ink Ground Espresso, cause that gives everything a nice grungy look, and I really like that. And since I now have brown flowers in addition to the white, beige, and red, This also brings in more brown elements and ties everything together a little bit. Right now, I take the flowers and attach them with the bread, and I can move the flowers a little bit, what is quite nice. And later on, I could also take it apart by taking out the breads. But I think for now it looks quite good, and I'm really satisfied. Now I am just checking what the flowers would look like on the front cover with its effective width by having a real spine. And after looking at it for a while, I really like that. And I also decided the back will stay as it is, at least for now. Who knows, I might change my mind later, but for now, I will leave it like it is. So, time to say goodbye now. I am really happy with the cover. I think it turned out very nicely and it's a lot cuter than just the lace on it. And I think I will have a lot of fun working in it this year. I hope you enjoyed it and that I could also show you what happens when you don't like a project the way it turns out. You don't throw it away, you just keep going until you like it. In the end, you can always take everything apart and start again from scratch, but you should never lose your courage. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to the channel, especially if you'd like to see how this little treasure continues, because so far this was only the cover, the entire inside is still to come. And maybe you have some great ideas for how I could design the inside of the journal, ideas I haven't even thought about yet. So I would be very happy if we could exchange ideas about it in the comments. Until then, have a crafty day. See you soon. Bye.